Introducing Marshall Heilman, CEO at DTEX Systems. How are you, mate?
I'm doing pretty good, Joseph. How are you doing?
Yeah,
I
good to
appreciate
see
you
you.
having me here.
Yeah. I was saying, is that actually a real backdrop? But you said you've got a good visual.
It looks really cool. I wish this was actually my office, but I work from home. I'm remote like a lot of people these days, and I have a very boring blank white wall behind me.
Where's home for you?
So I live in Miami. I love to say I'm part of that crew of people that moved from somewhere else to Miami at the beginning of the pandemic because why not? It's a beautiful beaches, great weather,
Yeah.
and apparently the virus skipped Miami.
Love that. Well, similar to me, I moved out of London when the pandemic hit, and I moved 2 hours south by the beach. So yeah, I don't blame you. But look, Marshall, lovely to have you on. I like to get a bit of a fun fact about my guests before they come on the show. And earlier this week, I was speaking to Barbara Massa, and she didn't have anything specific to say, but she said you're the best dressed in cyber. And I think you showing up today has definitely confirmed that.
No, I don't have a sports jacket on, so I feel like I let you down with that comment.
No, love it, love it. Well, look, Marshall, with all my guests, brother, I'd like to sort of take it right back to where it all began and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people in our industry, I kind of found my way here. It wasn't like I grew up planning to be in cybersecurity. I actually joined the United States Marine Corps right out of high school. I wanted to go see what the world had to offer, and I felt like that was a good way to travel the world and get experiences I wouldn't have otherwise. And so I did. And as luck would have it, I ultimately became a communications brain, which means I got to build networks and do a lot of really, really fun computer geeky stuff, if you will. Back then, stuff that now is like silly, but back then was cutting edge. From communications, that got me into security while I was in the Marine Corps, and I got on the offensive side of security, so penetration testing and red teaming. And so I did that for a number of years in the Marine Corps. And after 8.5 years total, I wanted to go see what the civilian sector had to offer. And I got honestly completely lucky. I saw someone speak at Black Hat from Mandiant when Mandiant was this little company that no one had ever heard of. And I was like, wow, that sounds like fun. I want to do exactly that. And so I applied, didn't think I'd get hired. Luckily enough, I got hired. And as it turned out, I didn't know anything about the company. Mandiant was tiny. I was a very early on employee. I didn't know the risk that I was taking. And like I said, just real lucky. And then at Mandiant, where I had a 17-year career, I very quickly learned that doing offensive or red teaming work back then in 2006, when I first joined, was nowhere near as interesting as doing incident response work, which is what Mandiant was known for at the time. And so I switched my specialty, if you will, to incident response, and then I was lucky enough to do incident response work for about the next 10 years as a consultant. I ultimately ended up leading the worldwide red teaming and incident response teams, so all the hardcore technical services, which was really fun, amazing experience. Taught me everything that there is to know about how to treat customers, how to tailor services, how to be customer obsessed, and so forth, as well as just everything there is to know about security, right? From there, I was lucky enough to be able to step outside of consulting and take a leadership or technology leadership role, where I got to run a team that we called the Advanced Practices, which was a kind of a consortium of people with different technical specialties. We had some engineers, we had some threat intel specialists, we had some malware analysis and reverse engineering specialists, and so forth. I ran that team for a bit, and I got to run our managed detection and response organization. So I got to learn what it was like to build a structured, repeatable service. Very different from a consulting service where everything is tailored. And then for my last couple of years at Mandiant as the global chief technology officer, so I got to really evaluate companies and technologies and people and strategy and so forth. And all of those things really helped prepare me for the role I eventually took in November of last year to be the CEO of DTEX Systems, because I had had a chance to work with all the different departments that you need to work with to be able to run a company, which is very different sometimes than a traditional security leadership perspective where it's all, people and technology based, but sometimes you miss the sales and the marketing and
Mhm.
cash flow and finance and all the other aspects you need to successfully run a business.
Love that. I think what I find fascinating is that you spent 17 years at Mandiant. Look, obviously a great company. What do you think? Because considering the like US average tenure is like 2, 3 years now, and you did 17 years, like what was so great about Mandiant and what kept you there for so long?
Yeah, Joseph, that's a great question. There's a number of factors, so I'll try and boil it down to just a couple. The first and foremost was the mission. When you're doing work that you can't believe you're getting paid to do, which was absolutely my experience at Mandiant, there's no reason to go anywhere else because you're doing work that is so fulfilling and you care so much about that it's basically a dream job. So I think first was that the work was absolutely amazing. The second was the people. It's great to work with like-minded people that care about what you're doing just as much as you do. and everyone is pushing themselves to be better and better and better in a safe environment. So you have work that you love, surrounded by people that you really enjoy working with that make you better and you make them better. And so you're actually going out and accomplishing something. So I think that's really the second aspect is the people. And the third is the opportunity. I gave a very, very quick high level overview of my career there, but the reality was, the Mandiant executive team gave me the opportunity to move into different positions that I was interested in. I wasn't just stuck or pigeonholed in one position. My career trajectory wasn't just that of a consultant. I had the opportunity to say, I'm interested in doing something else. Let me step outside of consulting. And I always knew I could go back to consulting if I needed. But in this particular case, I went to technology leadership, right? Then I ran an MDR service, and I stepped to a executive leadership role. So I got these different experiences, which are very interesting to me. I didn't have to leave to go to another company to get those experiences.
Yeah, love that. Into obviously leadership itself, like such a big thing. Like, how was it working for Kevin?
And Kevin's great. Kevin's a mentor to everyone who's ever worked for him. As you know, he's an icon in the industry. It's I've seen all phases and all sides of Kevin over the last 17 years. What I think is a little bit unique about my relationship with him, when I got hired at Mandiant, I wasn't an executive right off the bat, right? I was actually the most junior consultant you could be, and I worked my way up throughout the ranks. So I saw him as, my boss's boss. Initially, when I first got hired, all the way up to ultimately my direct boss towards the end of my tenure at Mandiant. So I got to see all the different sides and perspectives of him. Like when I look at how I approach being a CEO now, many of the ways that I operate are lessons I've taken from him. Where I've seen him
Love that.
succeed, where I've seen him talk maybe about something he wished he'd done different. I try and take those learnings and incorporate them into my own style.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, I'll
definitely.
never be as good of a speaker as him. That's one of those things that I've tried and just failed at, and I'll never be able to speak like him. But
Love
everything else
that.
that he does, I try and emulate.
Yeah, great. Well, I thought that was quite unique that you had spent such a long time there. So I was really curious to learn that. So thanks for sharing. And I imagine now as CEO, like you say, you are taking a lot of those things that you learned and putting them into DTEX. So before we talk a little bit about DTEX, I know we want to dive into insider risk. I think what would be really useful if we could get a bit of a definition, because I think like most people, when they hear about insider risk, you just think of like bad employees. And I know that it's
Mhm.
much more than that. So yeah, really curious as to like, how do you really define insider risk?
Yeah. So when I think about like how an organization should view insider risk, it's any risk associated with an internal employee or with an employee. And the way we kind of categorize that is when you have an employee, you have employees who are negligent, and negligence means they do something that's against policy, or they maybe accidentally leak some data or a password, but they didn't intend to do it. Maybe they didn't know that they shouldn't have done it, or they simply made a mistake. So you've got your negligent employees, you've got your malicious employees. These are ones who are maybe they're leaving and they're trying to take data on their way out for whatever reason. Maybe they've got they're upset with the company for some odd reason. Maybe they're an activist, so they're trying to take some kind of negative activity against their company. And then you have compromised employees. Some employees whose accounts have been compromised by an external actor trying to do something malicious in the organization that, completely unbeknownst to the employee, not their fault at all, but their account is being used. So from an organization's perspective, as you think about risk, and you think about how insiders need to play into your risk profile, you have to think about what an insider, both the human and the account, can do in your environment, both good and bad. So
Got it.
that's how I define insider risk and how I think organizations should be thinking about it.
Yeah. What's third party insider risk then?
So third-party insider risk would be a vendor, right, or a contractor that has access into the environment. So they're not officially an employee of the organization, but they have access like an employee. So they would still be considered an insider because they have access to to systems and to data that that are sensitive and could potentially damage an organization.
Got it. I think it's really interesting at the moment. It seems like a lot of big corporates and companies, you see like the Teslas, and they're saying that things have happened. Why do you think that more companies are coming out and saying that they have been compromised from an insider risk perspective?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Cybersecurity, back in let's say 20 years ago, was something that companies didn't talk about publicly, right? And so there was a lot of education that had to go. Organizations had to be comfortable and being willing to publicly report what was going on and so forth. And if you remember, Google very famously reported, I believe it was around 2010 or so, when the Chinese government broke into their organization, they very publicly came out and talked about it, and that was one of the first of its kind, that type of an incident. And that then started to open the floodgates for other organizations to feel more comfortable talking about it as well. When it comes to insiders, I mean, this is sabotage and espionage has been around since the beginning of time, right? This is not a new problem. It's just a problem that's getting more public awareness, and I think that's because cybersecurity has made organizations more comfortable talking publicly about issues that they're having from a security perspective. Now I think as we're seeing more, we're seeing the industry trend more and more towards insiders, whether insiders are being bribed or insiders being extorted, or just because of the geopolitical tensions and activism in the world, more employees want to take actions into their own hands. It's becoming a bigger problem for organizations than it was in the past,
Mhm.
which means organizations need to start talking about it. They want to make the public aware. They want to make certain that their security teams are sharing best practices and stories with their peer organizations so they can learn from them and vice versa. So it's just becoming a more acceptable problem to talk about. I think the other aspect of it now is just if you look at the world we live in today, it's a very technologically complex environment. It's hard to be a perfect employee at all points in time, like no matter how well your intentions are, because technology is so complex. You can make a mistake very easily without realizing that you make that mistake. You've got bring your own device. So now employees are using their own cell phones, their own computers, their own iPads, and so forth. There's a lot of mistakes that can be made there, where there's malicious activity they can bring in accidentally to a corporate environment. You've got your remote work, so I think it's hard for employers to fully trust that their employees are working as hard as they said that they're working, or they're only working one job. Right, one thing I've seen in my line of work a lot now are employees who go and get hired at a couple different jobs, so they're not working very hard at any one because they have multiple jobs. Or what we see most often is if someone who will go and get hired at like 10 different companies, they'll farm their job out to someone in a foreign country, and then they give that person remote access into this organization to usually do their work on their behalf. Sometimes it's malicious in nature and intent. And so you've got all these different problems that are swirling there in today's environment, something that CISOs and organizations really have to think about. So of course they want to talk about it now. So
Yeah.
I think that long-winded way of saying I think that's why we're starting to see that the time is now for organizations to start talking publicly about the risks that insiders pose to them.
Mm.
And I want to add one more thing because I also think this is helping. I think with the rise of artificial intelligence and how important that is to our society and how important it is to technology companies today, a lot of the publicly reported insider incidents have been around the stealing of AI intellectual property to bring to competitors or to bring to organizations that those employees have started. And that is an untenable problem for a lot of technology companies, given that a lot of their valuation and future is going to be based upon artificial intelligence.
Very interesting. I think what I also found quite also naughty, but someone, a developer, had put some code into ChatGPT. I think it was from Samsung, and obviously with ChatGPT, anything that goes in is then theirs. So it's obviously that insider risk as well. Without, so yeah, pretty nuts. The other thing I found interesting, I was reading up on some of the reports that were saying insider risk could be the number one sort of attack vector, particularly going into next year. How big of a problem is this then?
I think it's a huge problem. We at one of our customers, we caught an employee who was going and aggregating data, particular sensitive data from that particular organization, with the intent of sending it out to a foreign government because he's been bribed by the foreign government. In this particular case, we were able to actually see the financial transaction take place, and so we could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this particular person had been approached by a foreign government, he was getting paid by the foreign government, and he was trying to actually steal data on their behalf. So I think as stealing intellectual property, it continues to be more important to cyber criminals and foreign governments than ever in the past. You're going to see these organizations do whatever it takes to get access to that data. And if you think of it from a cybersecurity perspective, it's not that we have a great handle on cybersecurity. There's still problems out there. There's reason that there are thousands of companies trying to solve this particular problem, but there are thousands of companies with hundreds of different types of technologies. And so we've got a pretty decent handle on cybersecurity. We generally understand how attackers are breaking in and what we need to do about them. When it comes to insiders, it's still the Wild West. We know, organizations don't have enough of a focus on what their insiders are doing because our systems are so complex. We've never really had to focus on them beforehand to really understand what is their security risk from their insiders, from their internal employees, from anyone who has remote access to their environment.
It's not just companies as well. I saw that a chap, he actually got sentenced to 22 years. He was like an NSA employee,
Mhm.
which is
I mean,
mad.
this is a problem I think federal governments have been grappling with more so than commercial companies for years, and federal governments have been more noisy about, or been more public about, and talked about, and that's why we can all name people like Robert Hansen, Edward Snowden, and people like that. Like those are household common names that we've heard of, and I think you're going to start seeing that more and more from larger commercial organizations as they start paying more attention to the insider risk. And again, it's not that this risk and these threats were not there 10 years ago. They just weren't as big or as prevalent or as popular as the external cybersecurity risks were.
Got it. Can you tell us a little bit more about DTEX?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll try and keep my answer short. Yeah, so in brief, DTEX is an organization that is dedicated to the mission of proactively protecting organizations from insider risks. And I think it's really important that word proactively, and we put that in a mission statement very specifically, because what you see in cybersecurity a lot is an event happens, a bad event happens, and then you react to it, right? The holy grail is to get what we call left of boom, or to get ahead of the incident so you can prevent it from happening in the first place. So DTEX leverages behavioral science built into our machine learning models to not only be able to catch someone in the act and deal with all the after effects and perform an investigation and everything right of boom, but we also try to proactively predict behavior, and so we can help organizations get left of boom. So I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say that I as an employee, I get a very bad performance review, and maybe I'm worried about getting fired. And then I start working 1 or 2 hours less every day. I'm sending 10% less emails out. Like, you can see a drop or change in my behavior. I am at higher likelihood to quit the company and to steal data my way out, or to take some kind of malicious action, than if I were someone who had just gotten promoted. I'm really happy with my job, financially secure, and I don't have any problems at home. Those are the same employee, but two very different profiles. And so we try and help organizations understand, or employees that might be at higher risk of becoming a threat than other ones. And so the organization can choose to, potentially do something about that. Maybe they want to counsel that particular employee. Maybe they want to take an action. It just depends. But the other thing that we do now, which is absolutely critical to who we are as a company, we're not Big Brother, and I don't think a good insider risk management program can ever come across as Big Brother, as a company's monitoring what their employees are doing at all times. So we have a core belief that employee privacy is the only way to have an effective insider risk management program. And so what our system does is we pseudo-anonymize all PII data, so that a security analyst does not know that it's Marshall Heilman, for example. They'll see user ABC123.
Mhm.
And so what happens is there's no inherent biases there. There's no targeting of employees. It's simply when an employee has taken an action that is against policy, or when employees, aggregation of actions spike their risk profile such that it's considered untenable for the organization, then the organization can say, okay, we need to do an investigation into this person. Who is this person? Let's get multiple people to come in, de-anonymize the data and understand who the employee actually is, so we can do something about it. So we try and take a very careful approach of protecting employee privacy while still allowing companies to protect themselves from negligent, malicious, and compromised employees.
Yeah, I saw that the cost of like an insider risk breach was like 16.2 million on your report. How, and I'll get your blog tagged in the show notes of this, but I saw that you had said about like getting executive buy-in for insider risk programs and threats. Why did you write that blog, and what were some of like the highlights of it?
Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons we put that blog together is because I believe another statistic is many cybersecurity programs spend less than 10% of their total budget on insider risk management. And so you now have a problem that's becoming more prevalent, and can be just as damaging, and in many cases more damaging, than an external attacker breaking into the organization. But organizations aren't spending a similar amount of money on the problem. Now, there's lots of reasons why that's the case, and I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong. But what it means is that as an industry, if we want to build a really comprehensive IRM program at an organization, we have to understand the reality of the situation, and how the business is looking at funding their programs and their risk tolerance. And so if I'm a CISO and I want to build a program, I need to understand those factors. And so I now need to know that the total cost of ownership is a really big deal. I have to be able to explain the total cost of ownership of this new thing I'm bringing into my environment. Oftentimes, the way to do that is to show how this new technology you're bringing in replaces an older legacy technology while giving you better capabilities and hopefully saving money. That then makes it a much easier situation to justify. You also want to be able to show the return on investment. If you're going to spend $300,000 on a system per year to potentially save $16+ million, well, that's kind of a no-brainer, especially if you're saving costs somewhere else. Another aspect of that blog was to talk about how you can quantify the impact of an insider risk management program. There's one organization I'm familiar with that did a really good job of having their CFO sign off on a dollar value for certain types of data. So every
Oh,
time they catch someone trying to steal that data, they can say, well, we saved the company $9 million. And so it's very clear in a way that their senior executives have already signed off on, to show the impact of that particular program. And so when you look at it from quantifying the data, showing the TCO, and showing the ROI, you make a very easy business case for from an organization's perspective, say, yes, I want to go ahead and implement this program because it makes sense for my business. On the other hand, if you can't quantify it and you're showing I want to spend $1 million to potentially save $1 million a year, that doesn't make sense. And so senior executives in the insider space have to understand how to properly present their case to their management so that they can get buy-in, so that they can build a program that is ultimately in the company's best interest, even if the company doesn't recognize it today.
Hmm. So DTEX as a company, are you guys adopting AI internally?
We have, yes. So we've adopted AI internally to help automate a number of our processes.
Hmm.
One of the things as a small company, we're not a Google or Microsoft, so we can't throw headcount at the problem, and not, they don't have unlimited funds either. But you understand what I'm saying. And so for us, we have to be smarter about how we use the people that we have, which really means leveraging AI to take on tasks that we don't want to do or take on repeatable tasks and to automate everything we possibly can, so that our humans are working on the tasks that are best suited for humans, and we have machines working on everything else. We've also, of course, implemented AI into our product. And so when you look at how we implemented AI in our product, we've really done it in two core ways. One is to help simplify the use of our product. So as with any security product like this, our tool is infinitely complex. You can do lots of different things with it, but not everyone's going to understand how to do those things. So by leveraging AI to have this concept of guided investigations, we're able to say, have artificial intelligence say, given this particular scenario, we think these are the steps you might want to take. You tell me which step you want to take, and then we guide the user along that journey, leveraging AI to give them the best possible outcome or the outcome that they're looking for. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is, we recognize that because we have an endpoint agent, and so we're able to see what every user is doing on their computer. Anytime they interact with an LLM, we're also able to see that. And so we have a technology that we're in the process of publicly releasing, where we're able to see the prompts or the inputs from a user to an LLM. We're able to see the data that the user is uploading, and we're able to see the data that users are getting back. Now, I would argue, and this is a bet that we're making, that part of your insider risk program needs to look at the type of data that users are getting access to from an LLM. For example, if you're let's say an engineer, you probably shouldn't be looking at salary data from HR. This is pretty obvious. But in the world of LLMs, what if your HR data, your salary information has been uploaded to an LLM? How do you prevent certain employees from accessing that data if they understand how to create the correct prompt? So one of the things we're looking at doing is being able to, because we dynamically profile users, understand that, hey, this particular user is either no longer in HR or never was in HR. They shouldn't have access to this data. Let's intercept that prompt and let's simply return something else that says you shouldn't have access to this data. Contact HR and so forth.
Mm.
So those are the two core ways that we're using AI moving to the future. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we've had machine learning, which is a subset of AI built into the product since before COVID, and so we've been leveraging AI all along to make certain that we're able to detect patterns of activity based upon behavioral science to understand the context of how humans are operating, why they're taking certain actions, and how an organization should think about those actions.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it. On the flip side of that, because you mentioned AI earlier about the rise of AI and the influence on insider risk, like how is that happening? Like, can you describe a little bit more around that?
I guess, can you say the question again? Like the rise of
Sorry,
AI with
yeah. So
insider
with
risk?
the rise of AI currently, on the flip side, not internally, externally, how is it exacerbating the risk of insider threat?
Yes, so I mean, where we're seeing, there's a lot of discussion around how much is AI really truly helping attackers or malicious employees. Where I think you're seeing it the most nowadays is being able to create really good deep fakes. So whether it's a really good phishing email, whether it's a video that purports to be someone speaking but it's not actually that person speaking, things like that. That's where I'm seeing attackers really leverage AI successfully, and that is to be able to break into an organization initially or get a user to take an action they wouldn't normally take. And so from my perspective today, that's what I'm seeing as probably the rise of AI helping a malicious employee or attackers the most.
Yeah,
And I'm sure
interesting.
in 6 months or a year that statement will be completely wrong, but that's where we're at today.
Yeah, because Reality Defender, yeah, I think it was those guys. They won the RSA sandbox this year, and that was all around deep fakes. So
Mhm.
interesting, makes sense. Are you guys FedRamp or going
We're
through?
in
Or
the we're in the process of being FedRAMP. Yes, we're
okay,
going through the fun process of understand. We've gone through the fun process to say of understanding how FedRAMP works, building out our infrastructure, getting in the process of getting it certified. And so I expect us to be fully FedRAMP certified by early 2025.
nice, love that. So what's the future for DTEX, Marshall? I know what 6 months ago you took a nice 50 million raise. Like, what's the future for you guys?
Yeah. So first of all, let me talk a little bit about like why we raised some money at this point in time. When I first took the job, I was looking at what I think DTEX needed to do to be successful, what I think the industry needed, right? And so, well, like when I stepped back and took a look at it, there's a couple of things I decided we absolutely needed to do. The first is I wanted to make absolutely certain that DTEX had a culture of customer obsession. I believe Forrester did a survey and has a statistic that less than 3% of organizations are truly customer obsessed. And we know every organization cares about their customers to some degree, but there's a way to be truly customer obsessed where you're in a long-term partnership with your customers and everything you do is for their benefit, not necessarily your own short-term benefit. And so I wanted to make certain that we were building a culture of customer obsession so that every interaction our customers had with us was a delight for them, that we are a company that they see as a partner and a critical partner into the foreseeable future because we solve such an important problem for them. So that was one of the first things we focused on. The second thing I want to focus on was building a world-class team of only A players. So that's focusing on the executive leadership, is focusing on management, is focusing on the technical and non-technical personnel. So we spent a lot of time making certain we could build the absolute right team for the mission that we had and the direction we wanted to take the company. We of course wanted to focus on the product. It doesn't do much good to be a technology company if your technology is not on the bleeding edge. And so we've made a number of investments to make sure that the technology and the people we have are right for our future, and to make sure that we stay on the cutting and the bleeding edge of insider risk management. And then to do those three things, we obviously had to have some funding so we could bring in new technology, so we could bring in new headcount and the right headcount and so forth. And so we went and we raised $50 million to allow us to do those things. From there, as we were in the process of doing those three things, we're of course looking at what are adjacent markets or what are other aspects of insider risk management that we should be doing to provide a better, more holistic experience for our customers. What I don't want to do is be a company that comes in and say, well, we're an insider risk company, but now we do these 3 or 4 other things just because we think we can sell them. We want to be a company that is dedicated to our mission, which is actually helping our customers solve the problem of insider threats. And so is what other things can we or should we be doing that our customers are demanding of us, or that we see the need, from their perspective, where we can solve a problem for them as part of our platform. So I'm trying
Love
to keep
it.
us very, very focused and targeted.
Yeah, yeah. And did you announce a partnership with Mandiant recently? A few
We
months
did.
back.
We did, yeah. So obviously it helps me coming from Mandiant. But Mandiant has an insider risk practice as well. And so they were looking for some technology that they can leverage in the course of their work. And so of course we set up the conversations. They saw the technology. Like many people see the technology, they absolutely loved it because, as we like to say, it does what we say it's going to do. We don't make up
Yeah.
a bunch of claims that it doesn't live up to. And so they've chosen to leverage us, where we meet their needs. They leverage to pull us into customers where it seems to make the most sense because they see the customer has a problem and we're uniquely designed to solve that problem.
Brilliant. Marshall, thanks for coming on the show, man. I wish you all the best of success at DTEX, and I'll see you soon for a beer, I imagine.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joseph. Thank you for having me. And yeah, one of these days we'll get together in person for a beer.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed today's show, please like and share with your friends and colleagues, as this is really important for the show's reach. If you'd like to be our next guest or are interested in Aspiron Search's staffing solutions, please get in touch directly with me or reach out to us via our website www.aspironsearch.com.